Hey guys, what's going on? This is BJ from Real World Guitar, and I am here today to talk to you about tuning, one of the most exciting parts of playing guitar. Okay, maybe not, but it is definitely the nature of the beast, and it's one of those things that we have to deal with. And as a teacher for many years now, it's one of those things that I think can easily get overlooked, especially even during private lessons. If you only have a half an hour on a lesson to get in there, a lot of times we're rushing in, and sometimes I'm guilty of it too. I'll grab a student's guitar, double check, make sure it's tuned, and be off and running. So what I've found, especially lately during the quarantine when we're not able to sit in a room together, is that students have had a lot of questions about not specifically how to tune their guitar, but why it's not sounding perfectly in tune, maybe some things they can do to make it a little bit more accurate. So I figured this video will help in a couple of ways. We're going to talk about three different things. We're going to talk about, first, the names of the strings, at least in standard tuning, so you can know what notes that you're going to be tuning up to. We're going to talk about physically what you're doing, how to actually tune your guitar. And then three, we'll hit some tips and tricks that you guys can use to maybe make it a little bit more accurate and make tuning just a little bit of a smoother experience for you all around. So first, before you can tune your guitar, you need to know what pitches or notes you're tuning up to. So we've got 6 strings on our guitar, and starting with the thick string, the one closest to you, that's the low E. So you have an E, an A, D, G, B, and high E. So your 2 outside strings are E, and again, going from low to high or closest to you to furthest away from you, you've got E, A, D, G, B, and E. So when we go ahead to tune our guitar, what we're going to do is hopefully you have a tuner nearby. Some of them will plug directly in. You can use a cable to plug in. Some of them have a microphone built in. But they all function roughly the same way. So they'll have a little bit of a meter with a line on it. And when you play a note, your tuner is going to decide which string you're playing. It's going to pick up that vibration, and it's going to tell you whether you're too low or too high. So in this case, I'm playing the low E string, and it's a little bit too low or flat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find the tuning peg here that's associated with that string, and I'm going to turn it what I think of as away from me. That's how I usually tell students to do it. And you can hear the string or the pitch gets a little bit higher. What I'm aiming for is to try to get that line dead center on the tuner. Now, keep in mind when you're doing it that the tuner picks up vibration, so it may not always stay dead center the entire time, but you're trying to get it to stay right in the middle, at least for a second or two, for as long as it will stay there. And this tuner, in fact, beeps a little bit when that happens, but let's go on to the A string. That one's a little bit sharp or a little bit too high, so I'm going to bring that one back towards me. So you can hear the note drops down. What I like to do is bring it a little below pitch and then come back up. There we go. Cool. That one sounds pretty close. Yep, there we go. That one's already in. And G, that's a little flat. Okay, going down to the B string, which is very sharp or very high, so I'm going to bring that one back down or away from me. Sounds much better. All right. Now, finally, a couple little tips and tricks of things you might want to think about when you're tuning. I mentioned, I think perhaps, might have been when I was tuning the A string, that I like to come down below the pitch and tune it back up. So that's one thing that's very important right away. What happens is, and you guys don't have to know all the physics of what's going on, but basically, as you tune up or get higher, you're adding tension to the string, so it's pulling on it a little bit more. When you tune down, so say your string is a little bit too high, as you tune down lower, sometimes the string can actually kind of get caught on itself and create a little bit of a loop, so there's some slack there. We might not even realize it. When we go to play or we bend a note, sometimes what can happen is we will pull that slack out of the string, and then the pitch drops. So if your string starts out high and you tune down to the note without stretching your string out or checking anything out, oftentimes it's going to drop and go flat while you're playing. So a really important thing is, if your string is sharp, tune it down below the pitch that you want, and then tune it back up from there. So you always want to tune up to pitch. That's one really important thing. The second one is what I want to talk to you about: turning strings toward you or away from you, or clockwise or counterclockwise. It really depends on the guitar itself. Some guitars have 3 tuning pegs to a side. A lot of electric guitars, you'll see, will have all 6 on one side, so they're going to tune in the same direction. But again, another question I'll have some students ask from time to time is, do I need to line them up? Like, should they look the same every time you tune them? And absolutely not. I can totally see why you would think that. But what happens is, over time, with temp changes and humidity changes, your guitar is made of wood. So the wood changes, you stretch out your strings, they go flat. So the tuning pegs, or the machine heads themselves, don't necessarily have to move, but your string will actually change pitch. So when you go to tune it up again, it's not going to necessarily end up in the same spot it was the first time. So no, to answer that question, your tuning pegs don't have to be in the exact same location or orientation each time. The other tip I want to talk about is what I mentioned earlier, kind of turning the tuning pegs towards you or away from you. That may or may not be the best way to refer to it, but I think of it that way often because sometimes you'll have guitars like this one where you've got 3 tuning pegs to a side. Sometimes you'll have an electric guitar like a Strat. There's a lot of guitars that will have all 6 on one side, so you're going to turn them in the same direction. Depending on your guitar, the tuning pegs themselves might be a little bit different, and truthfully, you should hopefully have your strings strung up the right way, but sometimes even if they're strung up backwards or the opposite direction, that's going to change. So most importantly, you need to be listening for whether the pitch is going up or down. But that being said, with a guitar that's strung correctly, what you want to see is when the string goes up in pitch, it's basically what I think of as turning it away from you. In this case, on the top tuning pegs here, or the lower strings, that's going to be counterclockwise. And then you can come back down. And then same thing on the far side, on the high 3 strings, which are going to be on the other side of the headstock for me. When I play one of these, if I want to come down in pitch, it's actually coming back towards me this way. And then if I want to go up in pitch, it feels like I'm turning it away from me. So I'm not necessarily thinking clockwise or counterclockwise, but rather towards or away. And that works for both the ones on the top and the ones on the bottom side. All right. So again, I know that wasn't the most exciting thing in the world, but it is important to kind of understand what you're doing when you're tuning your guitar. So as long as we're in standard tuning, you want to remember it's E, A, D, G, B, and E. You want to know which direction you have to turn, so you want to listen for the strings going low to high or vice versa, or coming high back down to low. And then just a couple little things to keep in mind, the most important of which is when you're tuning your guitar, you want to always tune from low up to pitch. If your strings are a little sharp or a little bit too high, bring them down below the pitch you want and then bring them back up. That'll help keep your tuning a little bit more stable and keep it a little more accurate for you. So again, thank you guys for tuning in. Hopefully this was helpful for you, and I'll catch you again soon. Thanks.